ICPSD Restoration Talks. My name is Whitney Schroeder. I am co-founder and executive director. Today we have a special guest with us. As you see, there is no Ro. He is currently on the ground in Togo, and we are going to do a little conversation here with Madison, who has been over in Togo with us. So Madison, I'll let you introduce yourself to the crowd.
Yeah, thanks everybody. My name's Madison Jacobson. I'm currently the Director of Marketing at the USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council, but I'm also a University of Idaho alumni and was able to go to Togo and work with ICPSD through as a student through our International Studies Department, which is what my major was in. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll start with kind of what led me to going to Togo as a student. So the International Studies Department at the University of Idaho, it requires students to have an experience abroad, whether you work abroad or study abroad. They also encourage students to claim an emphasis for their degree. So mine was in global development and resources in Africa and the Middle East. So a lot of students went to Europe for study abroad and things like that, or South America, but I knew that this opportunity, which was offered through Professor Afachow's program, was the right thing for me for checking that box to go abroad. And it was actually my first time out of the country. So
oh, really?
Yeah, so I was with a group of students. I was the only one who hadn't been out of the country before, so It was quite a big experience for me. But I also recognized that because I had not been out of the country before, I was pretty open to, anything that we experienced. I had no preconceived notions or expectations, really.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was an easy transition for me, I think.
Good.
Yeah.
And how long were you there for?
I was there for, we were in West Africa for almost 3 months. We started in Ghana and then spent over 2 months in Togo.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So you went there as part of your program. What'd you do while you were there?
So while I was there, I do want to talk a little bit about Ghana quickly because that was kind of our entry into Western Africa, because Ghana is an English-speaking nation. So we spent a week there kind of traveling around, seeing some really cool sites. We went to a very prominent and well-known historical site that was a castle that was also one of the sites that was, Cape Coast, that was a major site, right? It's quite an experience.
I know you can feel just it. Even thinking about it.
Same, my hairs on my arm stands up. It was one of the major sites, one of the first sites too for the West African slave trade. So quite an introduction. I think that was a really important, one of the most important stops on the trip, especially as kind of a first stop to really understand the legacy of colonialism in the community. But we also got to, we went to a town called Ho in Ghana. We went to a waterfall that I'll never forget. It was so funny. I was actually on a work trip in DC, and I ran into somebody who had been to this same waterfall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you can't forget it because the top of the waterfall, it's really, really tall. They told us it was the tallest in West Africa. Yeah. But there's a huge bat colony, and they're big bats.
Fruit bats.
Yeah, fruit bats up at the top. So I'll never forget that. That was so cool. Then we transitioned, we crossed the border into Togo. Our first stop, I think, we went straight to Noche, but we did spend time in Lomé and went up to the northern part of the country as well. So I was there, I was placed with an organization called Action de Développement pour l'Autopromotion de Communauté. I haven't spoken French in a while, so please forgive my accent there. It's not very good anymore. But essentially, it was an organization that was very grassroots, on the ground, to promote the autonomous development of local communities. Awesome. And it was cool because I was there in 2016, and that was the first year that ICPSD broke ground on the nursery. So it was really neat to be kind of there for the origin story and part of that. The organization I was interning with did a lot of similar work that ICPSD was doing. So we were also going out into communities and taking seedlings and planting them as, agroforestry, reforestation efforts within land that had been cleared for cash crop production. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about, go in a little more depth about just that, experience of watching the birth, I guess you could
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
of our, restoration efforts on the ground over there.
Yeah, it was so impressive and so humbling, and I think the part that I admired the most about it is how much the local community was absolutely empowered to, be in a leadership role with the development of the nursery. And I still remember the individual people that were so prominent there, like Eduardo, who I know is still very active with the organization. But it was so impressive to see, just an area that was essentially cleared, and then by the end of the trip, there were thousands of seedlings already planted, already growing. It was really, really neat to see the collaboration between different cultures, because when I was there, we also had a team from the College of Natural Resources from the University of Idaho.
Yeah.
So
Pitkin Nursery.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So they were there, offering expertise, but very much in a transferable way. So we were learning just as much, you know, and that's, I think, the most important for any kind of organization or development effort, to do the good work that is intended to do.
Yeah, and they were a wonderful resource for us on the ground over there, not only as, additional bodies helping out, but also they did a lot of our initial data collection with people. So they sat down and interviewed I don't even remember how many people to, gather context as we were heading into this collaboration with the local community. And so they brought back just all this just data about, what people's views were on their challenges and things regarding reforestation and agroforestry and those sort of things. And so that just set us off, I feel like, on a more sure footing, in a quicker pace than we probably would have been able to do, just a few of us. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that data collection was, essential to really assess actual community need, rather than a group coming in and telling people what their needs are, right? Which doesn't seem to ever have the best results. So.
No, not always.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, having been on the ground and a witness to the start of all this, do you want to kind of talk about your perspectives as it's gone on? Because that was back in 2016. So 7 years ago? We're encroaching on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I think now, even a year or two out after I had left Togo, I think they'd planted at least 25,000 seedlings by that time, which was so impressive to see. It really started. I mean, it was an empty lot essentially when we got there. So to see, really, it was, and to see, how the nursery grew, not only while I was there, but then seeing photos and videos after, and it's just an entire expanse of seedlings, and to know how many trees have been planted over these at least 7 years now is mind blowing. Togo has one of the highest deforestation rates in the world, for a country that's about the size of New Hampshire. So it's a big impact.
Monumental for people who live there, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering, not only the economic viability of a community and its resources, and seeing, so much of that depleted, and kind of the interest of cash crop generation, which is, an external driver of growth. It's typically not.
It's a lot of those large cash crop operations are owned by entities outside of Togo.
Yeah,
and outside of West Africa. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, even outside of the continent in some cases. So, I think to be there, and to, even while I was there, see these areas that were forested, that have been cleared for crops, and even to just start seeing little seedlings growing in that area, you could get a really good idea for what this is going to look like in a few years. And I can only imagine how, lush and rich, and how much more of an environmental kind of partnership that this is bringing to not only the plants, the agriculture, but the people as well. It's really impressive and really inspiring and really important.
Thank you. Did you want to talk a little bit about, so just as a little context for everyone, we brought Madison in not just because she's, was sort of there at the launch of the restoration efforts, but also she's been just a wonderful long-term supporter and advocate for ICPSD. And so I'm going to put you on the spot and let you tell us why do you persist? Why do you remain passionate about this?
Yeah.
And such a great supporter.
Absolutely. It's 100% my pleasure. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to even be involved and to support, because it's development work has always been very important to me. I'm so fortunate that I figured out that passion in college, because I didn't really understand what it was before.
Yeah,
It's important to me because I just, I think every human deserves, the best life possibly attainable for them, and to go there and be immediately embraced in a community that has no idea who I am or where I come from, to be so immediately accepted, and the generosity that was shown to us throughout the entire trip there, that's something that you just don't forget. It leaves an impression on your heart, and to be able to continue to be invested in any way, or to support, the development of this community, and the empowerment of the community and the people that I was able to meet and that were so caring and kind to me, there's just no hesitance for me to be able to continue to do that. I'll never forget some of the really kind, thoughtful things that people prepared for us or sent us home with, and it just was something that really put a lot into perspective as somebody that has grown up in the United States and in Western society, if that's what you would call it. I think that it was just eye-opening, and really showed you, there's things that we all need, and a lot of the things that we might think that we need here in the United States growing up are not typically what is most important.
Yeah. No, I very much resonate with that. Yeah. I was, the community care was a big one for me also. Like, just, I just remember kind of being in awe and being like, I want more of this.
Yeah.
This is such, and that's that like mutual learning, right? It's like going over there and seeing that and being like, how can I bring that back and replicate it in my own community as well? But then just, the warmth of it all when you're over there is always, it never fails to make me just, want more of it, and to feel so grateful to have been invited and privy to those spaces.
Exactly.
And, like you said, do everything I can to, every life matters, that whole cliche thing. But it really does. I mean, you go over there and not one person is more or less deserving than another.
Yep, exactly.
And, same here, but it's just, a driver, I think.
I think what also struck me too is the kind of work that it takes to build a life in other parts of the world is different than the kind of work that it takes to build a life where we have so much access to things that make it a lot easier for us, whether we're aware of that or not. And so seeing that, understanding that, appreciating that, and then being constantly surrounded by so much joy and happiness it's so uplifting. It's like, how have I ever had a bad day in my life? It was just really really empowering and inspiring for me to be in a community that was just so warm and welcoming, and truly embodied a sense of community greater than I think some of the cities and towns that we live in over here.
No, I very, very much resonate on that level.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to my initial experiences, and continued experiences over there. It's something I always look forward to, is just the open expression of, like you said, joy, but also grief. I've always really respected that, as it's just, people are very open to and respectful of people's expression of emotion, and I've always been drawn to that.
Yep.
So.
I agree. That was something that I kind of had to emotionally learn while I was there, because I think that, in U.S. culture, it's very, you ask someone how they're doing and we always say we're fine, and that's just a pleasantry. It has no depth to it beyond that. So you're right. I'm so glad you brought that up, that there were times when it was, almost striking that you're like, oh, I wouldn't have said that back home, or something. But I appreciate that vulnerability so much. I think that is how we facilitate true human connection and build relationships. So that was really beautiful to see too. Emotions are very much welcome on the table in that culture.
Yeah, and you know, that speaks to, like, you know, going and operating and being partners in other cultures, is that, you know, I want to say adapting, you know, to meet and match and in order to operate in those cultures. But I think for me personally, it was almost more like an opening of my heart in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
To be able to authentically engage in that sort of culture, and understanding that, you know, by opening myself, that is a way of showing respect.
Yeah.
You know, and things like that. And so it, it's not always easy, but in a lot of ways it's liberatory.
Absolutely.
As well, so.
Yeah, you're so right. I think that's so well said. And yeah, it's liberating. It's a way to, you know, show and build respect. And then it's something that I'm just so grateful to have learned and have a part of myself now in the ways that I communicate.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it time and time again in a lot of our ICPSD stuff of how it's, you know, we're over there learning just as much, if not more.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Than we're technically bringing in, and that's, you know, that, you know, I loved how you said that earlier of getting to observe, you know, just how centered the communities were at the beginning of this operation. And, you know, I personally feel we've been able to maintain that. But it was one of those things that I just think is so foreign in a lot of ways to Western ways of operating. And I it's been a struggle, I think, to maintain that, but also the driver, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I really like that you articulated it in that way, because it was a little bit of a check for me to be like, okay, cool. Like, we're still on the path.
Yeah,
You know, 'cause sometimes in the day-to-day it's like, ugh.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah. And I think it's really neat to see with that, you know, intention to continue to drive this kind of development and partnership within community, how much since I was there, ICPSD has expanded in its programming. You know, when I was there in Togo, you had the office space at the time that's now the computer lab that you operate, which is so neat to see that resource available to the community. You know, being there, you really understand the impact that allows for children and for learning and for just personal and professional growth. It's really amazing to see the diversity of activities that ICPSD is implementing within the community.
Yeah, that's a good point. We basically just had we were starting the nursery. The youth program was very fledgling, if not quite formed at that stage. And, our experiential learning program, which we'll talk about in the next episode, was also, you know, still kind of a seed at that point. It hadn't quite launched yet. So, but you were kind of at the forefront of that concept of, you know, being able to bring folks from the Western context, not only to work, you know, directly in our nursery and stuff, but, you know, to have those deeper community experiences and sharing of self and culture, and you know, contributing to the great work that's being done by local nonprofits. I mean, there's a lot of partnerships that we have that are just that, is supporting local nonprofits to do what they do.
Yeah, you know? Which, you know, is kind of the system of the organization that I was interning with, you know, had back and forth transfer with ICPSD. And I imagine now that organization probably sources a lot of seedlings, you know, from there. And,
there is a bit of that.
Yeah. So, which is very cool to see kind of all of the different connecting points within this like web that's been established.
That's such a good word for it, is a web. I think as an organization, sometimes we've had a challenge in trying to paint that intricacy of all the web and all the connected pieces and moving pieces, and so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. And I also want to emphasize, you know, not the the things that I remember the most, that I value the most from the experience is, I'm so grateful and humbled to have been part of the work at all, but it's the people that you always remember. And even, with the youth that we were working with, which were at the time very similar in age to me, not now, but but that was so fun to like connect with local high school students. Of course, I was in college, and they were practicing English and we were practicing our French, and but there was no gap in actual connection, whether we understood each other verbally or not. It was always, everyone was happy to be together, and it was really fun and really neat to have those connections and across cultures and across languages. And I'll never forget that. Learned so much from that. But just like the fun connection and the absolute lack of any hesitation to be a friend and to offer help and support and protection too, and just watching out for people. It was really amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned earlier how the experience was sort of like a pivot point for you. You'd been passionate about these things, but the experience was a pivot point for you in your undergrad experience.
Yep.
Which I think is a pretty profound thing to state.
Yeah.
Would you mind kind of digging into that a little bit more, especially in the context of how it's led you to where you are now?
Yep, absolutely. So I don't come from any background in agriculture. My parents are both artists by trade. So I came to college, and they had no idea what I was doing when I went to school, I don't think. But, I discovered the International Studies department. I was so interested in it. I knew I wasn't really interested in like an international business track or necessarily even, I just, this concept of development and resources always spoke to me, but I wasn't exactly sure what I would do with that, and I certainly didn't have a direct background in it. So going to Togo was the first time that I was really actually out in the field, like in any kind of, significant agricultural production area, and understanding really the relationships between production, for subsistence production within communities and production for economic reasons outside of the community, and then also the impacts that those economic drivers have on the environment that they're being produced in, like the impact of deforestation and clearing land for that kind of stuff. It just really was a whole circle for me. In my degree, we'd studied the concept of cash crops and how that drives economies, especially in developing areas of the world. But being there on the ground and seeing it really clicked. Yeah. And I understood from that experience. I love working in any kind of reforestation efforts. I'm really interested in agricultural production. I don't have any formal or academic background in this, though. I'm not a plant scientist. But that passion was there. I understood right then that I was interested in working in food systems. I was interested in working in, production systems at a global level. And that led me, after my studies, to find this job that I had no idea existed, and most people still don't, which is fine, with the USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council. So we're an agricultural trade organization that represents all U.S. production of dry peas, lentils, beans, and chickpeas. And I'm happy to say I've been there for 5 years, and I just became the director of marketing for them. So I run marketing programs both domestically and internationally now. But it's very, amazing. Yeah, it's wonderful. I never could have told you that I would be here, or at all, Yeah. So, but I have to credit the experience in Togo to really sparking that interest in me and kind of helping me hone in, like, this is the area that I think I want to work in, and I have absolutely no regrets. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
And congratulations. A little round of applause for Madison.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any last thoughts you want to?
This is just kind of a funny story. I think it's funny. So while we were there, we also had the opportunity to start learning the Ewe language, which is difficult to learn because it has historically was an oral language, and then when German colonizers came through the region, they gave the language a German alphabet, which really doesn't match a lot of the sounds in the language at all. So it was difficult to learn, but the Ewe culture has a really interesting system for naming their children, where children are, for their Ewe name at least, given a name based off of the day of the week that they were born, and then like the birth order. So Rose, Ewe name Kajotse, he was born on a Monday. I'm not sure where he is in the birth order.
He's pretty young.
8th. Yeah.
It's like far down.
Yeah. So it was funny because I understood what my name would be, which was Abla, the first girl born on a Tuesday. And also when I was in Togo, I go by Madison and Maddie, but I was going by Maddie there, which sounds a lot like the French word for Tuesday, Mardi, like with the accent especially. Yeah. So most of the kids thought that my name was Tuesday, which was awesome. And it was just unique that actually the Ewe name also reflected that, just the way that the universe works out. So that was just a funny little thing that's always struck me in how things align like that. So,
love it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and I just absolutely am overjoyed to support the work that ICPSD does. So
thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.